everybody, my name is Lene and I'm a UI developer with Red Radix in Madrid. Originally I'm from Germany, but I've been living in Spain for over a decade now. So my day-to-day life is pretty much trilingual, as English is the main language when it comes to work. So a few months ago I decided to rebuild my personal website and I came up with the idea to include all three languages as well. So today I want to share with you what I have learned along the way, and we're going to build a simple starter project together using Eleventy. Let's begin. In your project folder, create a new package.json. We only have to install one package, Eleventy 2.0. At the time of recording, Eleventy 2.0 is in Canary release 29, and it really is only a matter of days before a new major version is officially rolled out. So check which release is currently available in the official repository. First, we create an Eleventy config file to specify our input and output folders. I also set Nunjucks as my default global template language. Next, create the input folder we just defined, and in there two folders called _data and _includes. Inside of _includes, add a file called base.njk. It contains our main layout using the template language Nunjucks. The title tag, the meta description and the content will be pulled in from our Markdown template files. For styling, I use a small classless CSS framework on a CDN because this talk is not about CSS, unfortunately, and this gives our website just a little bit of styling. Add the header and footer partials in the same folder, but just leave them empty for now. To be able to start Eleventy, we add the CLI script for the dev server and the production build in package.json. Before we continue, let's have a look at the terms localization and internationalization, as they are what all this is about. Localization is all about working with the actual contents. That is, in my case, the translation. In a more serious scenario, this is about adjusting the tone of voice to fit the culture you're targeting, adding currencies and units for a specific locale, or modifying multimedia so that your message comes across correctly in that specific cultural context. Locales are circumscribed by ISO language codes, composed of both a base language and the country of use. As developers, we usually take care of the step before that, which is the internationalization. That is, preparing the code for the requirements of different locales, like making sure the languages with the right to left spelling are handled correctly by CSS, or the text contents from different languages can take up different amounts of space without breaking the design. So, with the idea of a multilingual personal website in mind, we're actually doing a little bit of both, but CSS unfortunately is totally out of scope. Instead, we're preparing our Eleventy layouts and templates to be ready for all that. Eleventy now bundles a plugin especially for our use case. We just have to activate it in our Eleventy config file. We also need to specify default language. I choose English, but it can be any language. We'll get back to it later. First, let's think about how to structure our project. You can choose to buy country-specific domains, set up subdomains, add URL parameters, or create localized subdirectories. Eleventy compiles based on folder structure, so localized subdirectories work perfectly. Let's add 3 folders, named by the 2-character ISO code of each language, and in each one we create 2 files, index.md and about.md, and fill them with contents. Now what happens if we run the dev server? In our output folder, we get an index.html for each localized subdirectory and a folder called about that has its own index.html. If we want the languages to be consistent, we can just add a custom permalink. When we run the dev server again, we see the about me folders in their respective language. If you want to automate this a little bit more and make it more intuitive to use, here's a smart solution I found in the Eleventy base blog, which will include internationalized blog posts once Eleventy 2.0 is officially released. You have to add a so-called parent directory data file for all localized subfolders. Here you pass in the respective language in the permalink and you check for an optional front metadata entry in your template that gets slugified. To understand how all this is working, it's crucial you dive into Eleventy's data cascade. We always want to separate code from translation. Our code lives in layout files, and our contents are created by Markdown in template files. We also need to store some localized strings for the layout files. This is where global data comes into play. We create 4 files in our _data directory. Meta.js for our metadata, languages.js for strings needed by the layout file, layout.js just to define a global layout for all templates, and navigation.js for our menu. The plugin gives us an addition to the page variable and 2 new universal filters. If you have worked with Eleventy before, you've probably made use of the page variable. Page.lang represents the language tag for the current page template. First of all, we use it for the HTML lang attribute. This is very important. It is used by screen readers to provide the correct accent and pronunciation. The dir attribute stands for direction and prepares our code for any right-to-left language that might be added in the future. It is pulled in from our languages.js and defaults to LTR. Next, we use page.lang for our navigation, so we can access the correct menu set in navigation.js. Then, inside the footer landmark, we pull in a localized string and loop through our alternate versions of the current document to create a simple language switcher. This is what the new filter localilinks does for us. It returns an array of the alternative content for a specified URL. We can access the properties for the URL, the language code, and the label. We also want to inform the search engines. So inside our base layout, we add first the link attribute to the current URL, and then we loop over the alternative versions. There's still a few things missing in terms of accessibility. Your navigation landmarks should have a label, and this label must be translated to our languages as well. The same goes for the skip link, to skip over the menu directly to the main landmark. We're setting both strings again in the languages.js, which is globally available. Before we can use this on the live site, we need to adjust one very important detail. Right now we get a 404 in the URL root, as we are not yet redirecting the visitor to their preferred language directory. Language-based redirects always match against the first language reported by the browser in the accept language header. Here you can see my current accept language header for a Chrome instance. You can see that there are more locales that represent fallbacks if the first language country option is not available. So this header is probably responsible if you get served a website in French when you are visiting France. For us, this means that we have to set redirect rules so that the browser redirects our visitors to what is, in the best case, actually their preferred language. Netlify provides a straightforward implementation for redirect rules. Inside our Netlify configuration file, we first indicate what our build script and our output folder are. Then we set redirects for German and Spanish, as well as a general fallback redirect to the English version of our website. Let's see if that's working. Our website is now deployed on Netlify. In this Chrome instance, I'm getting redirected to the English subfolder, which is in line with the accept language header. In my Firefox instance, I'm getting the German side, also correct since the German locale is the first language reported. So that's it. On my website I've published an article that goes through everything step by step, and you can find the link to the public repo of the project we just created. Please feel free to add new languages or to improve the code. So, in the spirit of the talk, all that is left to say is gracias, danke, and thank you for your attention. See you around.